We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. US President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu inspire words over Gaza conflict after Biden's warning that Israel risks losing global support in the conflict. NATO and leaders from multiple countries reject French President Emmanuel Macron's comment on sending troops to Ukraine. Michigan, a battleground state for the 2024 U.S. presidential primary, is holding the Republican and Democratic primary while Trump battles it out with Haley to secure the Republican candidature. Biden is projected to lead the Democratic race. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Tamil Nadu to visit Maharashtra later today will lay foundation stones of several developmental projects in both the states. And on to the details. The United States said it does not want to see tensions rise further between Israel and Hezbollah, adding that Israel had assured Washington it wants a diplomatic solution.
We do not want to see either side escalate the conflict in the north. And in fact, we are going to continue to pursue a diplomatic resolution of that conflict. And while we saw the defense minister's comments, we have also taken note that repeatedly the defense minister and other officials of the government of Israel, including the prime minister, have said publicly that they would prefer the situation to be resolved diplomatically. And so that's what we're going to continue to pursue. And ultimately, that would make military action unnecessary.
While U.S. President Joe Biden warned that Israel risks losing global support in the conflict. On Monday, Biden said the U.S. hopes to have a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza by next Monday. The U.S. president also suggested later on that Israel could lose support from around the world if it keeps up with this incredibly conservative government they have. Well, in his response to U.S. President Biden, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he had consistently resisted pressure to end the conflict prematurely and that this stand of his popular U.S. support that will help them continue the campaign until total victory over Hamas.
Since the beginning of the conflict, I have been leading a political campaign with the purpose to curb the pressures intended to end the war before its time and, on the other hand, to gain support for Israel. We have significant success in this area because today the Harvard-Harris poll is published in the United States, which shows that 82% of the American public supports Israel. This means that 4 out of 5 citizens in the US support Israel and not Hamas. This gives us another year of strength to continue the campaign until complete victory.
And U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby confirmed that U.S. troops will not be stationed in Ukraine following French President Emmanuel Macron's statement that France could not rule out sending troops to Ukraine. France's Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné clarified that France could send troops for specific needs, but not for fighting in the war against Russia. Kirby also denied that the U.S. could have non-combat participation in the war. The only U.S. military personnel currently on the ground are part of the Defense Attaché Office. NATO allies Germany, Britain, Italy, Spain, Poland and the Czech Republic distanced themselves from Macron's idea, while the Kremlin deemed a direct conflict between NATO and Russia inevitable.
The only U.S. military personnel that are in Ukraine are associated with the embassy as part of the Defense Attaché Office, and they're doing important work in terms of helping us with the accountability of weapons and systems that are provided to Ukraine. The president's been clear there's not going to be U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine.
Well, Pentagon spokesperson Major General Patrick Ryder said the United States has no plans to send troops to fight in Ukraine during a briefing on Tuesday. Ryder added that international efforts are coming in order to ensure that Ukraine receives aid as quickly as possible to meet their most urgent needs.
plans to send U.S. service members to fight in Ukraine. The president has been pretty clear on that, and that continues to be our position.
Well, Russia will escalate an ongoing influence operation this spring aimed at destabilizing Ukraine and scuppering international support for Kyiv in its two-year conflict with Moscow, Ukrainian intelligence warned on Tuesday. Ukraine is struggling to fend off Russian troops along much of the front line as Kyiv faces challenges in replenishing its ranks and a potential cut in U.S. military aid. The Kremlin will bolster its attacks by stepping up efforts to seed disinformation on social media, sparking conflict among Ukrainians and sowing doubt among Kyiv allies of its chances for victory, according to a presidential intelligence committee. Kyiv and its international partners say the war is part of a years-long hybrid effort by Moscow to subjugate Ukraine as it embraces the West. In a statement carried by Kyiv's domestic security and military spy agencies, the committee said the operation would culminate in late May when President Volodymyr Zelensky's 5-year mandate would normally run out. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and praised the kingdom's efforts in seeking a solution to end Russia-Ukraine war. A statement on Zelensky's website said the two men discussed Kyiv's peace formula for ending the conflict, and the president thanked the Crown Prince for his valuable advice in finding ways to speed up its implementation. Zelensky and the Crown Prince discussed the content of a peace summit Switzerland has agreed to host later in the year. Also discussed were possible steps for truly restoring security for Ukraine, Europe and the world. The Saudi state news agency said the Crown Prince affirmed the kingdom's keenness and support for all international endeavors and efforts aimed at resolving the Ukrainian-Russian crisis. Well, the Emir of Qatar has carried out a state visit to Paris where he met French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss the bilateral relationship between Paris and Doha. The two leaders also discussed the West Asia situation, including possibility of release of hostages in Gaza, a potential ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and the possibility of a future two-state solution. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Well, the talks taking place on Tuesday at the Élysée Palace, the French presidential office and residence, which you can see behind me here in central Paris. President Macron hosting Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar, for an official state visit, state dinner and official bilateral discussions between Paris and Doha about their bilateral relationship. But also, crucially, the key underlining point of the two men meeting is to try to forward the discussion on the situation in the Middle East. Can there be a deal to release some or all of the hostages still being held by Hamas inside Gaza, who were captured from inside Israel during Hamas's attack on October the 7th? Can there be a deal on a temporary or permanent ceasefire? That's certainly something that the United States president is hopeful of. Also, the continued flow of aid into Gaza during the conflict and also after the conflict. And on that point, can there be an eventual end to the war? What form would the two-state solution take? Now, the Élysée Palace have said very clearly that that is a key priority both for Qatar and for France as well, making sure that there is that option open for the two-state solution after the end of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. But Qatar has played this crucial role. We know that the Prime Minister was here over the weekend for talks with the United States, Israel and Egypt as well. It's the second time that France has hosted those specific four nations to try to get a deal on hostages, on aid and on an eventual end to the conflict. France being the crucial player in hosting those talks. The Qatari Prime Minister here over the weekend, and now on Tuesday for an official state visit, the Emir of Qatar. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
Moving on, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Tuesday he could not rule out widening a national ban on imports of Ukrainian grains if the European Union does not act to protect the bloc's markets. Poland last year extended a ban on Ukrainian grain imports Tusk made the remarks during a visit to Prague as thousands of Polish farmers took to the streets, escalating a protest against food imports from Ukraine and EU green rules. Also, thousands of farmers marched through the Polish capital before reaching the Prime Minister's office. Polish farmers protested in Warsaw, escalating their month-long strike that started early February against food imports from Ukraine and European Union regulations intended to curtail climate change. Polish farmers began a series of protests throughout the country earlier this month, which included a near-total blockade of all Ukrainian border crossings, as well as disruptions at ports and on roads nationwide. And ministers and international leaders from the G20 held a meeting in Brazil with President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, putting inequality and poverty as well as climate change at the top of the agenda. Brazil's Environment Minister, Marina Silva Brazil, stressed the need to tackle climate change to avoid further global instability in the celebration of 200 years of diplomatic relations with the United States. The UNDP's administrator, Atom Stena, said the G20 decisions have immediate consequences in the actions taken by governments in key global issues such as poverty, hunger, inequality and climate change. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva pushed to give developing nations of the Global South a wider platform in G20 meetings during Brazil's presidency. Well, nurses are being asked in to make up the shortfall as thousands of trainee doctors continue to strike in South Korea. About 9,000 junior doctors have resigned since last week over wages, conditions and a government plan to let in more students to medical schools. Chris Gilbert reports for more from Tokyo.
Well, the pressure is certainly mounting on Korea's health system, particularly on the front lines inside the hospitals, which are obviously facing drastic staff shortages. Now they are turning patients away. There are reports that emergency room beds are running out, that hospitals are entering what they call red alert when these beds start to become scarce, and also that nurses are now being requested to fill the shoes of doctors, to be given the legal protections or the legal entitlement to do that kind of work. There is reportedly some concern amongst this pool of nurses that they may be open or exposing themselves to legal action, to malpractice suits, which is interestingly one of the reasons why these doctors are resigning and walking out in the first place. One of their complaints is how legally vulnerable they are, as well as their pay and the government plans to, boost 2,000 more students every year into medical schools without addressing these trainees, doctors' concerns first. Of course, these calls for better conditions, for better pay are falling on unsympathetic ears with the government at the moment. They have taken action, filed complaints against 5 doctors who are members of the doctors' lobby in Korea. They have hired a prosecutor to the Health Ministry to give advice, and they have effectively given an ultimatum for all doctors and trainee doctors to return to their places of employment by the end of Thursday, by the end of February. And if they do so, they will not face any punitive action. If they fail to do this, then the government says it'll be unavoidable. These doctors will potentially face having their medical licenses suspended or even facing legal action. So this is all likely to come to a head at the end of play on Thursday. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo reporting for DD India.
Well, still to come on DD India News Hour. Japan will begin the 4th discharge of radioactive treated wastewater from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean from today. Brazil's Federal Police and Environmental Protection Agency rescue native parrots and monkeys suspected of illegal traffic into Togo. Stay with us to know more. Tension in Guinea after at least 2 people were shot dead during clashes between protesters and security forces.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lepakshi Kurana, and moving on, as pollings have concluded in parts of Michigan, where both Democrats and Republicans are voting in the state's primary, U.S. President Joe Biden is being projected to easily win the Democratic presidential primary race. Edison Research projected, but a protest vote by Democrats angry over his support for Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza was showing signs of strength as initial returns were counted. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley are continuing to fight it out for the Republican nomination. On Saturday, Trump defeated Haley by 30 points in her home state of South Carolina, but Haley has vowed to continue in the race through Super Tuesday on the 5th of March.
The big story of today and into the evening here in the United States has been the dissent in both the Democrat and Republican parties that was evident from those results in the state of Michigan. Now, on the one hand, no surprises about the overall results in the sense that Donald Trump and Joe Biden both easily prevailed in their party's nominating contest, although the Republican delegates will actually be dished out on Saturday as well. But in both of those instances, in the case of the Republicans, Nikki Haley still, at least so far, with something around 30% of the vote, signaling that there is some unease with Donald Trump as the party's nominee, despite the fact his overwhelming sort of march to the nomination here, it appears. And then on the Democrat side, the big story is this uncommitted category, which at the last I checked was at about 15%. So 15% of Democratic voters have checked the uncommitted box on their ballots. And there was a big push ahead of this primary for voters who were not happy with Joe Biden's policy towards Israel, his support of Israel as it continues its operations in the Gaza Strip. So the message from organizers was show your frustration with Joe Biden by checking uncommitted. And from at least what we know so far, that frustration appears to be very high because the final results would certainly be a historic win, it seems, for the uncommitted column if things continue in the direction that at least the initial results indicate. So Michigan has a large Arab American population, and they certainly have mobilized to try and support this uncommitted vote. So that's really the big story that we're all watching, is how big will this uncommitted vote be in Michigan among the Democratic voters.
Well, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley took aim at former President Donald Trump 1 week before the state's presidential primary election, saying she would be a better candidate against a Democratic President Joe Biden. The former South Carolina governor addressed a crowd in Centennial ahead of the state's primary elections on the 5th of March. Nikki Haley also reminded her supporters of a recent comment by Donald Trump, encouraging Russia's President Vladimir Putin to invade United States allies. While speaking at the rally in Colorado, Haley also said that Trump will not be able to win a presidential election and that the country's next president will be a woman.
Donald Trump got on stage, went off his teleprompter, and said that he would actually encourage Putin to invade our allies. Now think about what that means. That means Donald Trump's going to side with a tyrant who kills his political opponents. That means Donald Trump is going to side with a thug where 500,000 people have died or been wounded because of Russia invading Ukraine. That means Donald Trump is going to side with a madman who arrests American journalists and holds them hostage. Putin's made no bones about the fact that he wants to destroy America. And Donald Trump's going to choose him over our allies who stood with us after 9/11?
Well, President Joe Biden urged the top 4 leaders of Congress on Tuesday to take swift action to prevent a potential government shutdown and called for the passage of emergency aid for Ukraine and Israel. President Joe Biden said that the U.S. needs to find a solution to fund the government while providing aid to Ukraine and avoiding an economically damaging government shutdown. Biden made the comments during a meeting with leading Democrats and Republicans in the Oval Office of the White House.
We have to replenish the air defenses for Israel, and we have to work on making sure they don't face the threat from, they can face the threat from what's going on in the Middle East, not just from Hamas, but from Iran. And government funding, I'm sure you guys had all that all taken care of, but all kidding aside, I think that it's Congress's responsibility to fund the government. We got to get about doing it. A shutdown would damage the economy significantly, and I think we all agree to that, and we need a bipartisan solution.
TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, and the Japanese government will begin the 4th discharge of radioactive treated wastewater from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean on Wednesday. The move comes after the latest batch of water has been confirmed to meet radioactivity levels within the standards set both the entities. The wastewater release first began in August last year, despite opposition from countries such as China.
By the end of this 4th discharge, which is beginning today, about 31,200 tons of that are going to have been released into the Pacific Ocean. So there's a long way to go. There's going to be about 30 years or 40 years to complete this very long-term project. This discharge is going to be the same as the previous 3 to the extent that it's going to be 7,800 tons released over about 17 days. The point of difference this time is that TEPCO had a bit more confidence, it says, in the process, so it's going to skip a step as this water is released. Up until now, right before release, it's given a last-minute check for levels of tritium. That's a radionuclide which cannot be extracted or cleaned from the water, and so it is diluted with about 1,000 times more seawater. It is given a last-minute check usually before release, but now TEPCO said it's not going to do that anymore. It is going to start instead taking a sample every day of the released water as it goes out into the ocean to check for tritium levels. It's also going to be checked daily about 3 kilometers out into sea, the seawater, and for a week after this discharge finishes, about 17 days from now. But up to this point, TEPCO and the government are relatively satisfied that the levels of tritium that remain in this water are well within their set safety standards. And you can expect on March 11th, which is the 13-year anniversary of the tsunami and meltdown which started all of this, there is going to be a protest here, as there is every year. On the international front, on the geopolitics, look, China's blanket ban on all Japanese seafood remains in place, and that's not looking to change anytime soon. There hasn't been any movement from China on that. Japan has been urging some movement on this, but at the moment Xi Jinping, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, says he's waiting to see how the politics play out in South Korea and in Japan over the coming months, the domestic situation, before he agrees to a sit-down with those leaders, a trilateral summit. That is the forum in which the Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is going to ask Xi Jinping and China in general to lift that blanket ban. But for now, it's no change. It's hurting Japan's economy, and they're looking to diversify their markets going forward.
And Secretariat employees in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir will go on strike on the 29th of February against the government's discriminatory policies against them. According to the president of the Secretariat Employees Association, Islamabad wants to fire Kashmiri ad hoc workers to replace them with those from Pakistan. The association alleged that the employees in occupied region are not receiving fair treatment when it comes to their allowance. Members of the association are also annoyed as the employees in POK are not being promoted to permanent positions. Well, there's simmering tension in Guinea after at least 2 people were shot dead during clashes between protesters and the security forces. It comes amidst a general strike against the ruling military government for suppressing opposing views in the West African nation. DD India's correspondent Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
A general strike began in Guinea's capital, Conakry, on Monday. Shops, schools and markets were shut in protest against media censorship in the country. 2 years ago, the military government banned protests and arrested many opposition leaders, journalists and civil society members. A confederation of unions in Guinea called for the general strike to demand the release of the journalists and media activists who were arrested in January. But Monday's strike took a different turn when the protesters blocked roads, which led to sporadic clashes with security forces. 2 young men were shot and killed in the process. Tension had been building in Guinea since Friday after the Secretary General of the Union of Press Professionals of Guinea was sentenced to 6 months in prison. He was arrested in January for taking part in an unauthorized protest against the military government. Meanwhile, last week, the military dissolved the transitional government which was set up in 2022 to return the country to civilian rule. The junta leader, General Mamadi Doumbouya, has not given reasons for dissolving the transitional government. Nabil Ahmed Rufai in Accra, Ghana, reporting for DD India.
Well, Mexico's Popocatépetl volcano erupted on Tuesday, causing smoke and ash columns to rise 2 kilometers from its crater. The National Center for Disaster Prevention warned people to stay away due to over 77 discharges, water vapor, volcanic gases and ash. Local authorities issued a yellow alert, urging residents to be vigilant and prepared for evacuation. Popocatépetl, Mexico's most active volcano, is located 70 kilometers southeast of Mexico City. A New York skyline showed the city blanketed in fog as unpredictable weather swept throughout the United States. Forecasters predict that some U.S. residents will switch from Bermuda shorts to snow pants in less than 24 hours due to a heat wave in the Middle Plains and South. This week's hot wave comes amid other extreme weather in the U.S., including California's atmospheric river, storms and historic low ice cover on the Great Lakes. It's difficult to attribute any particular weather pattern to human-caused climate change. Also, a huge fire engulfed a second-hand market in Iraq's Erbil. Hundreds of shops at the busy Langa Bazaar burned down, causing major havoc. The fire was said to have been caused by an electrical short circuit. Firefighters were able to bring the fire under control after a few hours of continuous blaze. And towering flames and dense plumes of smoke engulfed Texas amid a relentless wildfire on Tuesday. The fire blazed through 200,000 acres by Tuesday afternoon. Texas Governor Greg Abbott have issued a disaster declaration for 60 countries. Authorities ordered evacuations for various countries affected by the blaze. Moreover, residents get evacuated on boats from the flooded city of northwestern Bolivia after the Acre River burst its banks. An extraordinary flood of the Acre River, which flows between Bolivia and Brazil, left a large part of the city of Cobija submerged in water, forcing the evacuation of hundreds of families from their homes. Videos showed boats being used to reach residents carrying their belongings and later moving to shelters. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Many actors, including Bradley Cooper, Coleman Domingo, Paul Giamatti, Cillian Murphy, Jeffrey Wright, Daniel Brooks, Emily Blunt, America Ferrara and Jodie Foster were nominated for leading roles statuettes at the 96th Academy Awards. Dior designer Maria Grazia Chiuri unveiled her fall-winter collection, drawing inspiration from the late 60s with feminine tailored looks. The collection featured belted trench coats, flared miniskirts, long mesh dresses and trim jackets. The collection was accompanied by elaborate armor-like sculpture by Indian artist Shukantala Kulkarni. Paris Fashion Week runs until 5th of March. Brazil's federal police and environmental protection agency have repatriated native parrots and monkeys suspected of illegal trafficking to Togo. The animals, including 12 Lear's macaws and 17 golden lion tamarins, were found in Togo's capital, Lomé. The animals were in poor condition due to alleged mistreatment and were contaminated with motor oil. The animals are worth between $60,000 to $100,000 on clandestine markets. The animals will need rehabilitation before they are let to Kuwait. And still to come, DD India News Hour. India observes National Science Day today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi extends greetings. Indian Navy, NCB and Gujarat ATS together in a joint operation seized drugs along the Indian maritime border. The sea phase of Milan 2024 concluded with Indian Navy's commitment to fostering cooperation.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Kurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. US President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in spar words over Gaza conflict after Biden's warning that Israel risks losing global support on the conflict. NATO and leaders from multiple countries reject French President Emmanuel Macron's comment on sending troops to Ukraine. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Tamil Nadu to visit Maharashtra later today will lay the foundation stones of several developmental projects in both the states. And moving on the second day of his 3 states visit, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Tuticorin, Tamil Nadu. Prime Minister also visited exhibition reviewing all the developmental projects. In the public program at Thoothukudi, Prime Minister laid the foundation stone of Outer Harbour Container Terminal at V.O. Chidambaram Port. The project aims to leverage India's long coastline and favourable geographic location and strengthen India's competitiveness in the global trade arena. Prime Minister also inaugurated various other projects aimed at making the V.O. Chidambaram port as the first green hydrogen hub port of the country. These projects include desalination plant, hydrogen production and bunkering facility, etc. Prime Minister launched India's first indigenous green hydrogen fuel cell inland waterway vessel under Harit Nauka initiative. Prime Minister also dedicated tourist facilities in 75 lighthouses across 10 states or union territories during the program. Prime Minister dedicated several road and rail projects also. Later in the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his visit to Maharashtra, will release the 16th installment amount of more than 21,000 crore rupees under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi through direct benefit transfer to beneficiaries. With this release, an amount of more than 3 lakh crore has been transferred to more than 11 crore farmers' family. Prime Minister will also disburse second and third installments of Namo Shetkari Mahasanman Nidhi, benefiting about 88 lakh beneficiary farmers across Maharashtra. Prime Minister will also disburse to 825 crore rupees of revolving fund at 5.5 lakh women self-help groups across Maharashtra. Prime Minister will initiate distribution of 1 crore Ayushman cards across the state. Prime Minister will also launch the Modi Awas Ghar Kul Yojana for OBC category beneficiaries in Maharashtra. Prime Minister will also dedicate to nation multiple irrigation projects benefiting Marathwada and Vidarbha region of Maharashtra. Prime Minister will inaugurate multiple rail projects worth more than 1,300 crore rupees in the state. Prime Minister will also dedicate to nation several projects for strengthening the road sector in Maharashtra too. And India observes National Science Day on February 28th to honour the great Indian physicist C.V. Raman. This year, the theme of National Science Day is promoting indigenous technologies for Viksit Bharat. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya reports for more.
In the realm of scientific discovery, there are those luminaries whose contributions transcend time, shaping the very fabric of our understanding. On National Science Day, we pay homage to one such luminary, Sir C.V. Raman. A visionary scientist and a beacon of inspiration, C.V. Raman altered the course of science with his groundbreaking discovery, the Raman effect. Every year since 1987, National Science Day is celebrated on the 28th of February to honor the great Indian physicist Sir C.V. Raman, who won the Nobel Prize for Physics. It was on this day in 1928 his discovery of the Raman effect came to light. This year, the theme of National Science Day is promoting indigenous technologies for Viksit Bharat.
This event is celebrated to commemorate the discovery, or rather the announcement of the discovery of Raman effect on 28th February in 1928. Sir C.V. Raman, who discovered this new type of radiation, is also called as Raman effect, Raman scattering, and so on and so forth. Till date, it remains one of the most significant scientific discoveries ever made in India. And this year's theme is Viksit Bharat at 2047.
The Raman effect revolutionized spectroscopy, empowering scientists to probe the intricate nature of matter with unparalleled precision. Raman spectroscopy became a cornerstone in fields ranging from chemistry and physics to biology and material science. But beyond his scientific achievements, C.V. Raman embodied the spirit of curiosity, perseverance, and national pride. His relentless pursuit of knowledge serves as a beacon of hope, inspiring generations to pursue their passions and push the boundaries of human understanding. As India commemorates National Science Day, let us not only celebrate the accomplishments of C.V. Raman, but also reaffirm our commitment to fostering a culture of scientific inquiry and innovation. Happy National Science Day. Tapas Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
Well, on National Science Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has extended his greetings and reiterated his government's commitment of working to encourage research and innovation among the youth. In a tweet, PM wrote, and I quote, "Greetings on National Science Day. Our government is continuously working to encourage research and innovation among the youth. This is important to realize our dream of a Viksit Bharat," unquote. And moving on, the 5th edition of joint military exercise between the Indian Army and the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force is being conducted in the Indian state of Rajasthan. Exercise Dharma Guardian is scheduled to be conducted from the 25th of February to the 9th of March 2024. The exercise is an annual exercise and conducted alternatively in India and Japan. The contingent of both sides comprises of 40 personnel each. The Japanese contingent is being represented by troops from the 34th Infantry Regiment, and Indian Army contingent is being represented by a battalion from the Rajputana Rifles. Aim of the exercise is to foster military cooperation and enhance combined capabilities to execute joint operations in semi-urban environment under Chapter 7 of United Nations Charter. Well, India's Air Chief Marshal B.R. Chaudhary is on an official visit to Bangladesh. On his arrival, he called on the Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Both discussed issues of mutual interest and furthering avenues of defense cooperation between the two nations. Earlier during his visit, he also paid tribute to the members of the Bangladesh Armed Forces who made the supreme sacrifice during the Liberation War of 1971 by laying a wreath at the War Memorial and Bangabandhu Memorial Museum. He also called on chiefs of the Army, Navy and Air Force as well as the PSOs of Air Force Division. Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Parnpree Bahiddha-Nukara paid courtesy call on India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar at his residence in New Delhi. Discussions underscored the existing civilizational ties, including cultural, linguistic and religious connections on which the present-day India-Thailand robust partnership is based. Well, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar welcomed Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Thailand Dr. Parnpree Bahiddha-Nukara on Tuesday. Dr. S. Jaishankar and Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister chaired the 10th India-Thailand Joint Commission meeting in the national capital. This is his first official visit to India, which is scheduled for 4 days. And India is all set to witness its first ever Startup Mahakumbh, the largest celebration of Indian startups from the 18th to the 20th of March at the prestigious Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. The event will cement India's reputation as a melting pot of innovation and amplify the country's global startup footprint. The event is expected to host 1,000 plus startups, 10 plus thematic tracks, 1,000 plus investors, 500 plus incubators and accelerators, 5,000 plus conference delegates, 10 plus country delegations, 5,000 plus future entrepreneurs and 40,000 plus business visitors over the span of 3 days. Speaking at the curtain raiser, India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal emphasized that throughout the 3 days of Startup Mahakumbh, the startups will be able to engage with investors and relevant stakeholders and create a sub-ecosystem to support each other with ideas and learn from the experience of others.
Showcase to the world that this is only a 8 years young startup story, but in less than 8 years we've become the third largest in the world with big aspirations for the future, sporting over 100 unicorns, with a number of good ideas on the anvil to grow and become bigger and better.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. After successfully completing the trilateral exercise Dosti at Maldives, Indian Coast Guard ships Samarth and Abhinav reached the Sri Lankan port of Galle. During the visit, the ships will conduct various training and visits for Sri Lanka Coast Guard personnel. 16th edition of biennial Dosti validated and strengthened the joint commitment of Coast Guards of India, Sri Lanka and Maldives to stand together for the common good. The sea phase of Milan 2024 concluded on Tuesday. The Indian Navy's participation in Milan 2024 demonstrates its commitment to fostering cooperation and building maritime security partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region. Indian Navy's participation included both aircraft carriers, INS Vikramaditya and INS Vikrant, the indigenous aircraft carrier showcasing India's commitment to safeguarding its maritime. Indian Navy, NCB and Gujarat ATS together in a joint operation seized 3,100 kg of drugs along the Indian maritime border, the largest ever seizure of drugs in the Indian subcontinent. The international market value of these drugs is estimated to be more than 2,000 crore rupees. Indian priest performed Bhasma Aarti at India's Mahakaleshwar temple in Ujjain. The Bhasma Aarti is one of the earliest rituals in the temple. Devotees wake up well before dawn to witness and participate in this sacred ceremony. India's Dibrugarh Airport gets upgraded navigation system for better safety. The airport completes the successful setup and calibration of a Doppler Very High Frequency Omni Range system. The installation and calibration of the DVOR at Dibrugarh Airport marks a critical milestone in enhancing navigation capabilities for incoming and outgoing flights. And still to come on DD India News Hour. World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference in Abu Dhabi. India made a strong case for a permanent solution to the public stock holding. Mumbai camp hopeful of a strong showing in the semi-finals as Shreyas Iyer replaces Suryan Shetge in the squad for the Ranji Trophy semi-final. And traditional Japanese Hina dolls are on display in Okayama Prefecture.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on in the ongoing World Trade Organizational Ministerial Conference in Abu Dhabi, India made a strong case for a permanent solution to the public stock holding or the PSH issue. PSH refers to the practice of government holding stocks of essential commodities for food security purposes. India argued that resolving PSH, a pending issue for 11 years, is crucial for achieving food security and improving the livelihoods of millions residing in the developing nations. India emphasized that focusing solely on the trade interest of exporting countries neglects the fundamental needs of developing nations. Highlighting the support from over 80 countries representing more than half the world's population for their proposed PSH, India urged the WTO to address this imbalance and ensure a level playing field for resource-poor farmers. And Hong Kong government has unveiled its annual budget as it struggles to kickstart the economy and revive the city's standing as a global financial hub. While you're watching DD India News Hour, time now for some sports news. The Board of Control for Cricket in India, Secretary Jay Shah, extended a warm praise to Jacintha Kalyan on Tuesday on becoming the first female pitch curator in Indian cricket history. Jay Shah referred to this milestone as a historic stride for Indian cricket, which will be a significant turning point in the sporting landscape of the country. Kalyan is currently overseeing the pitch preparations for the Women's Premier League in Bengaluru, marking a significant milestone for gender inclusivity in the sport. Jay Shah highlighted on the tireless efforts behind the scenes that contribute immensely to the success of the game. An Indian team all-rounder Ravindra Jadeja had his big fanboy moment in Ranchi as he posed outside former captain MS Dhoni's house as a fan and shared photos on social media. Following India's famous victory over England in a tense game with 5-wicket margin, Jadeja made the most of Indian cricket team's stay and posed in front of the gates. Both the players enjoy a special equation with each other both on and off the field. Jadeja made his debut for India under Dhoni and spent 10 seasons under him, playing for the Chennai Super Kings in the Indian Premier League. Jadeja has been a key player for CSK under Dhoni and has played a huge role in their success over the years. Jadeja and Dhoni will again reunite for IPL 2024 in March. An Indian middle-order batsman Shreyas Iyer has been included in Mumbai's squad for the Ranji Trophy semi-final to be played in Mumbai on Saturday. Mumbai are set to face Tamil Nadu in the last 4 clash. Shreyas will replace Suryan Shetge in the squad of 16 that was finalized by Mumbai Selection Committee, chaired by former India pacer Raju Kulkarni. When Shreyas had made himself unavailable for the quarter-final citing fitness concerns, it had led to the furore over whether the batter was pacing himself up for the Indian Premier League at the cost of first-class cricket. The Mumbai camp will now be hoping that Shreyas bolsters a wobbly middle order with a strong showing in the semi-finals. And India's Union Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports said the government has been putting immersive efforts to support sports ecosystem in the country. He said with enough government support, India is readying 17,000 plus sports persons every year. Thakur was attending the inaugural session of Bharat Sports Science Conclave.
All of you present here must be aware of the efforts being put in by the government to support our sportsperson and create an ecosystem that aids our athletes in becoming world champions. We are focused on multi-pronged development, building multi-purpose modern infrastructure across the country. In the last 10 years, we have spent about 3,000 crore rupees on 300 such sports infrastructure, directly supporting our athletes through the top scheme. Every year, we have more than 17,000 plus upcoming players who participate on that, and I'm glad to say here many of them have participated in the Commonwealth Games, Asian Games and the Olympics as well and won the medal for India.
And world number 4, Daniil Medvedev downed Kazakhstan's Alexander Shevchenko 6-3, 7-5 on his return from a foot injury at the Dubai Open on Tuesday. Despite seeing his serve broken in each set, the 2021 US Open winner and defending Dubai champion powered past Shevchenko, winning 4 games in a row at 3-5 in the second set to secure victory in under 90 minutes. The first round match at the ATP 500 event was Medvedev's first since his Australian Open final loss to Jannik Sinner last month. The 28-year-old Medvedev, who has won 20 titles, improved to 7-1 to begin the 2024 season. Medvedev had withdrawn from matches in Rotterdam and Doha due to foot injury. And traditional Japanese Hina dolls are on display in Okayama Prefecture in Japan ahead of the annual Girls' Festival on the 3rd of March. The dolls are on display at 30 locations in the Ashimori district, including merchant houses built during the Edo period. The event runs through 33rd of March. Alright, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Kurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.